So I put out a video about why publishers won't support Linux gaming, and you lot absolutely kicked off in comments. Some of you came with receipts, some of you came with conspiracy theories and mystery NDAs, and one absolutely gem of a human being described Proton as just a shittier version of Windows. Mate, shittier than Windows? I didn't even know that was physically possible. That's like calling tap water a shittier version of sewage. So I hope you're ready for this, and we're going in deeper, and I'm coming in dry. Alright you lot, if you haven't seen the first video, go watch that one first, cause this is direct follow-up, and I'm not repeating myself for latecomers. Links in the description, off you go. For everyone else, hold on to those straps, cause we're gonna get wild. And please, for the love of God, and for the sake of your embarrassment, wait till end before you comment some bollocks. There's no worse than a self-righteous prick who thinks they've got a gotcha moment just to be roasted later. That said, it's free content for Trunk Chronicles, and we all love those, so crack on. So let's start at ground level. What do games actually run on? Engines. And here's where publishers' excuses fall apart before it even gets started. Unity, Unreal Engine, Godot. All three of the biggest commercial engines on planet Earth already support Linux builds out of box. Unity deploys to Linux from a single codebase. Unreal supports Linux export. Godot's completely free under MIT license and ships to Linux natively. So when a publisher tells you they can't justify supporting Linux, what they're actually saying is they can't justify ticking a checkbox in an engine that already does work for them. That's not economics. That's not engineering. That's apathy with a spreadsheet taped to it. But what about in-house engines, Scotty? Fair question. Let's look at those too. Valve Source 2 runs on Linux natively. Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, Half-Life Alyx, Deadlock, all running on Linux. No Proton needed, because Valve actually gives a shit. id Software's id Tech engines have had OpenGL and Vulkan support baked in for years. They open source Quake's engine under GPL. Even Doom 3's engine is GPL licensed. And then there's Frostbite, EA's own precious in-house engine. And this is where it gets really spicy, because EA's own technical director Johan Anderson publicly confirmed that Frostbite's dedicated server already runs on Linux for multiplayer games, and they've had client-side builds running internally. They've got it working. They're choosing not to release it. CD Projekt shipped Witcher 2 on Linux using Red Engine with a Neon compatibility layer. So don't sit there and tell me in-house engines can't do Linux. They can. They have. Publishers that own them just won't. But here's where this whole thing goes from frustrating to genuinely insulting. When you play a multiplayer game online, where does that game actually live? On servers. Dedicated game servers hosted in data centers. And majority of those servers run on Linux. Nearly every major multiplayer game you've ever played connects to back-end infrastructure running on Linux. And it's not even a secret. It's industry standard. Ubisoft, right? Company that won't give you a native Linux port are out. Co-developed Agons with Google. Agons, an open source dedicated game server hosting platform built on top of Kubernetes, which runs on Linux. Ubisoft literally helped build Linux-based game server infrastructure while simultaneously telling customers that Linux isn't worth supporting on desktop. Read that again. Let it sink in. They trust Linux to run their billion-dollar multiplayer backends, but won't trust it to run a game on your PC. And it's not just Ubisoft. EA's Frostbite servers run on Linux for multiplayer. Call of Duty, Fortnite, Battlefield, all connected to server infrastructure, overwhelmingly powered by Linux. Matchmaking runs on Linux. Account management runs on Linux. Inventory systems run on Linux. Even anti-cheat telemetry, and beautiful irony, anti-cheat processing runs on Linux servers. Same anti-cheat system that publishers claim can't work with Linux are literally hosted on Linux. If that don't make your head spin, you're not paying attention. But let's forget individual game servers. Where does all of this infrastructure actually live? Cloud computing platforms. AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. Together they control over 60% of global cloud infrastructure market. And every single one of them uses Linux as a foundational operating system. Linux powers 49.2% of all global cloud workloads. And that's a conservative estimate, because massive chunk of remaining workloads are containers and Kubernetes pods, which also run on Linux. Docker holds 87% market share in containerization. Kubernetes holds 92% in container orchestration. Both built on Linux. Both running Linux. 96.3% at top 1 million web servers run Linux. 100% at top 500 supercomputers run Linux, and have done since 2017. Every time you open a browser, every time you stream a game, every time you download a patch, every time an anti-cheat system phones home, it's going through Linux infrastructure. Microsoft's own cloud platform, Azure, runs more Linux virtual machines than Windows ones. Microsoft's own cloud prefers Linux. Let that marinate a bit. When someone tells you Linux ain't ready for gaming, remind them that it already runs literally everything gaming depends on. It's just not allowed to run on your screen. Funny that. Now I promised I'd come back to this, and I'm a man of my word. A commenter on last video described Proton as just Windows but shittier. And that comment's been living rent-free in my head ever since, because it's so beautifully, magnificently wrong that I almost admire it. Let's break down what shittier than Windows actually means, shall we? Windows, an operating system that harvests your telemetry data without meaningful opt-out, forces Copilot AI integration you didn't ask for, shoves OneDrive and Edge down your throat every time you boot up, gates your hardware behind arbitrary TPM requirements so perfectly good machines can't run it, breaks your system with forced updates that you can't defer forever, charges you over £100 for privilege, and according to benchmarks, Windows Blow alone can drop FPS by 5 to 7% on mid-range hardware just from background processors and telemetry phoning home. That's your baseline. That's what Proton is apparently shittier than. Now let's look at what Proton actually runs on. Linux, a free open source operating system with no telemetry harvesting, no forced AI integration, no arbitrary hardware gates, no mandatory accounts, no advertising baked into the start menu, updates when you decide. And on AMD hardware, native rasterization through Proton is only about 4 to 5% slower at 1440p. FSR actually performs better through Proton than it does on Windows. Even on Nvidia, average it is about 10% through API translation, and that gap keeps closing with every Proton update. Calling Proton a shittier Windows is like calling a clean, well-maintained local pub a shittier Wetherspoons, because it doesn't have the same sticky carpets and microwave lasagna. Whole point is that it's not Windows, and that's a feature, not a flaw. And here's beautiful irony that wraps this whole argument up in a neat, tiny little bow. Same commenter who called Proton shittier spent 2 paragraphs complaining about Linux fragmentation, hundreds of distros, different package managers, ABI instability, glib breaking old games. And you know what? Those are all real problems. He's not wrong about that. Native Linux ports do break over time. World of Goo's native port don't work out at box on modern distros anymore. Some of Feral Interactive's older ports have aged badly. Old games built against one version of glib can fall apart when libraries update. Linus Torvalds himself has ranted about kernel developers breaking user space. All of that's fair. But then this bloke dismissed Proton, which is literally solution to every single problem he just described. Proton targets Windows APIs. Windows APIs are stable. They don't break when Linux libraries update underneath. A game built for Windows in 2015 still runs through Proton in 2026 because Proton handles translation layer, not distro's native libraries. That's entire point. He argues himself into a perfect circle and didn't even realise. He identified a problem, were handed a solution, and dismissed it because it wasn't native enough for his standards. It's like complaining your house has no heating, being handed a perfectly working radiator and going, nah, it's just a shittier fireplace. And here's cherry on top. He said, game devs want to release a game, support it for a short time, then move on. He literally described disposable product mentality that first video we're calling out, and framed it as a reasonable expectation that Linux should accommodate. But Proton lets developers do exactly that. Build for Windows, ship it, move on. Proton handles Linux compatibility without developers lifting a finger. A small company called CodeWeavers based in St. Paul, Minnesota, working with Valve, built it. 2/3 of all commits to Wine come from their developers. They employ Wine's primary maintainer as their CTO, A small focused team achieved what billion-dollar publishers claim is economically impossible. And they did it as open source, free, for everyone. Developers don't need to support every distro. They don't need to worry about ABI stability. They don't need to maintain native ports. All they need to do is support Proton. Slap a Linux compatibility via Proton on store page. And they've sidestepped fragmentation, backends compatibility, and entire native port debate in one move. No excuses left standing. Games are built in engines that already support Linux. They connect to multiplayer servers running on Linux. Those servers are hosted on cloud infrastructure running on Linux. Anti-cheat systems that publishers claim can't work on Linux are literally hosted on Linux. Even EA's own Frostbite engine has had internal Linux client builds. Ubisoft co-built their server infrastructure on Linux. And Proton lets developers target Linux without changing a single line of code. Every single linking chain already runs on Linux. Every single one. Except your desktop. And that's not because it can't. It's because they can't be arsed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call an industry full of shit. And if you like this video, YouTube says you'll like this and next. So go check that out, and I'll see you there, you magnificent